Element of just wow that you can see from blocks away. People come now just to see the mural.
The purpose of these grants are for improvements that are in the public right-of-way that are visible to the community. What we're trying to do is to leverage these dollars to create programs that are affordable, creative, and that are certainly community-minded. The Wheat Ridge Business District offers matching grants in these following categories: up to $3,750 for sign improvements, up to $6,000 for conversion of a pole sign to a monument sign, up to $7,500 for facade improvements, up to $2,500 for architectural or design assistance, up to $6,000 toward a completed accessibility project, up to $3,000 towards a visual impact special project that increases curb appeal, up to $900 for a landscaping project, and up to $600 for exterior painting projects and supplies.
When people think about economic development, a lot of times they think about big companies. But when you look at where the majority of job creation happens and the majority of economic activity in the U.S., it's small businesses. Small businesses are the engines that drive job growth and that drive economic growth, and so it's important to have that in Wheat Ridge.
It's people, individuals or families that have committed themselves to providing a service or a product to a community that has a family, a history, besides just a phone number or a website.
To get that grant from the Wheat Ridge Business District and use that facade plus money to close that gap meant the world to me, because it means that this building looks beautiful. And I think it just adds to the whole way that 44th Avenue looks. I'm proud that we're here, but also it makes me and my employees feel a sense of pride when we come into the building. Like, I love coming to work here. It actually makes my heart really happy.
They are with you on your projects, whether it's a mural or a paint grant. There's several grants available, and it's something that as a business in Wheat Ridge, one should look into.
You know, there are a number of organizations that work in Wheat Ridge to try to do everything that we can to make Wheat Ridge the best place to live, to work, to own a business that we can be. And I think that the Wheat Ridge Business District is a very meaningful part of that, because a grant program is real dollars. It's a real incentive to help. I don't have to pay for every single cent myself. I can think a little bit bigger. I have more room in my budget, and I can do something that will look better. So I like that we can be part of making Wheat Ridge feel to people visiting the way it feels to me.
For more information, contact the Wheat Ridge Business District to discuss your project and schedule a meeting or site visit before you begin your project. wrbusinessdistrict.org.
Another big thank you to NCAR in Boulder for having us. Be sure to check out their virtual tours and programs online. We'll see you next time on Connected Colorado.
Because my parents told me I have to be responsible.
Because my first coach told me, you can do this.
Because my teacher helped me see the choices.
Because my coach treated me like everybody else.
Because my boss showed me how to do a good job.
Because a mentor believed in my potential.
Is why I am where I am today.
I'm swimming faster than I ever dreamed I could.
I discovered that I could work as an artist.
I led my high school team to 2 championships.
I am a valuable employee.
I have a career that I am passionate about.
I will be whatever I want to be.
What can you do?
What can you do?
Like all young people, youth with disabilities should grow up expecting to work and succeed. For more information, visit whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
Él es Pedro, mi papá, un hombre de los meros meros. No conoce la palabra miedo. Nada lo detiene. Y además de todo es muy fuerte, pero ahora es más fuerte porque ya se vacunó.
La vacuna contra el COVID-19 es completamente gratis y puedes obtenerla en cualquier sede de Denver Health. Para mayor información visita denverhealth.org/vacúnate o llama al 720-728-1294.
Welcome to the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee of Denver City Council. The Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee begins now.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, June 15th. This is the Denver City Council Safety Committee. We consider issues related to safety, education, health, housing, and homelessness. My name is Paul Cashman. I represent South Denver District 6. I have the pleasure of chairing this committee. Before we get into the day's agenda, I will ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, and I'll start to my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin Flynn, Southwest Denver District 2.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Stacy Gilmore, District 11. Good morning, Jamie Torres, District 3.
Good morning to everyone in chambers. I believe we have Councilmember Sid Ibaka joining us virtually. If you're there, would you like to say hello?
Good morning, Candy Sadabaka, District 9.
I believe you're good to see you. We'll look for your hand for questions.
Thank you.
This morning we have two items on the agenda. We'll start with our Office of Children's Affairs looking at a contract with Lifeline for operation of the Empowerment Center. Then we'll shift over to our Department of Public Health and Environment on a measure that would transfer the Crime Prevention and Control Commission from DDPHE to the Department of Safety, and there will be a public comment period on that second item. With that, I will turn the floor over to Melissa Janaszewski, our Executive Director of the Office of Children's Affairs. I hope I came close on the pronunciation of your name.
Very perfect. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Good morning, council members. Thank you for having us today. I'm here to seek your approval for a non-financial contract with Lifeline for a 5-year term to be the official operations vendor for the new Youth Empowerment Center in District 7. I apologize. As a reminder, the location is at 1240 West Bayard Avenue, Denver 80223, Council District 7 in the Valverde neighborhood. The intention with the Youth Empowerment Center was really coming out of the Youth Violence Prevention Action Table. The action table created over 20 strategies to address and reduce youth violence across the city and county of Denver. And this is a really comprehensive community approach to do that. Just as a background, there was a need reported by young people and community-based organizations alike, not just recently, but 31 years ago with the community plan that was developed in Council District 7. So we're really honoring the work that was created that long ago, so better late than never. The intention of the center was to provide trauma-informed wraparound services, not only for young people, but their caregivers and community residents in that district and surrounding districts. In 2020, the Department of Economic Development and Opportunity purchased the building at 1240 West Bayard Avenue through federal funding through the Federal Community Development Block Grant. And just a little bit more additional background and context, like I mentioned, this center is to serve ages 12 to 24, but we have a multi-sector approach with city agencies so that Human Services, the Department of Safety, the Office of Children's Affairs can continue to offer programs and services and supports not just to the young people, but caregivers and community residents. Just a little bit more information on the Valverde Neighborhood Plan. It was developed in 1991, and it really does support the map that you're looking at right now, which is our most recent 2021 Youth Violence Prevention Index map. Our intention at the Office of Children's Affairs is to not just start here in City Council District 7, but to open 7 additional youth empowerment centers across the city and county of Denver by 2024. So this is really serving as a pilot, and we're focusing on all the darker shaded neighborhoods that you see on the map today. Lifeline met and just really checked the box for all of the criteria that we were searching for, which is really implementing trauma-informed practices, a solid plan to engage youth, making sure that youth are not just at the table, but they are informing their programs and services throughout the entire 5-year term, and that they really have financial sustainability. One of the things that you'll probably be hearing from us sooner than later is that, we're asking Lifeline to really address a lot of our needs and what youth really identified that they wanted to see in this space, but we're not paying them to be in this space. And so I'm going to be searching for additional funding to provide some additional supports for Lifeline, but aside from that, they were able to meet all of the criteria, which was really important to us. So who is really going to be a part of this process? Well, the Office of Children's Affairs is going to manage this contract for the 5-year term in partnership with DIDO. We have a youth advisory council that is going to really be a key player in making sure that the programs and services remain relevant to youth, that they check in with Lifeline and other young people that are utilizing the space to provide feedback throughout. And then we're going to be creating an oversight committee, which would be comprised of multi-city agencies like DIDO, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Safety, the Department of Public Health and Environment, and so on. And that committee is going to serve two purposes. One is to make sure that the program relevance to young people is up to date, that everyone is satisfied with the services. And the second piece is really compliance, and that's where DIDO comes into play because they did purchase that building with federal dollars. We're hoping that with this oversight committee that we can continuously provide and make sure that they have workforce readiness programs, educational support, making sure that all of the programs are culturally relevant to the young people that are utilizing the space. And again, that they're engaging with youth leadership groups and really community-based organizations that want to provide additional supports and services in that space. So as a reminder, this is a 5-year term. This center can also serve young people and caregivers outside of those traditional workday hours, so they could be open in the evening and on weekends, and that they continue to have a really good rapport and communication between the city and Lifeline. So the Youth Empowerment Center model is really developed to authentically engage youth from community, making sure that they're at the center of everything that is being done within that space, that they demonstrate meaningful partnerships with city agencies and community organizations. They align programming with the city's youth violence prevention strategies that are this year being updated so that we can have additional strategies and tactics around that. And then design and deliver trauma-informed programs to work and provide, assist, develop mental health services and supports. That's something that is really key for us this year, that we're hearing from community that there's just not enough mental health services and supports across the city. So that's one of our main focuses. Our metrics look like this. We have our oversight committee focusing on the compliance and the relevance of those programs, and that youth are involved in every step of the way. And it's also community informed. Our lease agreement, I'm really proud of the fact that we worked with Councilwoman Torres' office and Councilman Clark and Cashman's office to really think about how do we reduce the cost burden to Lifeline and other community-based organizations that may have a lease in the future with city buildings. So we were really able to cover the costs of all of the maintenance and repairs, ensuring that we apply for the GO bond that will now cover the cost of renovations for that space, that can add a commercial kitchen, a music studio, and all of the other things that young people made recommendations for. So that I just want to say thank you to all of you for that. And just your continued collaboration. I know that we asked several Councilwoman Torres and Cashman's office to continue to participate in the oversight committee, just so that we can continue to hear from constituents and community members on how they want to utilize that space moving forward. And lastly, I'm here just to remind you again, I'm here for the approval for the non-financial contract between the city and Lifeline. Do you have any questions?
Yes, we'll start with Council Pro Tem Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Melissa. So to one of the points that you made, it's currently Council District 7.
Yep.
Valverde will join Council District 3 in 2023. So we're just paying close attention and trying to identify ways to support the effort because of how needed it is in Southwest Denver. So what are you laying out in terms of expectations of Lifeline in terms of expanding partnerships, really trying to reach and serve not just who Lifeline served as an existing nonprofit, but kind of the inroads into multiple Southwest Denver neighborhoods that maybe they weren't reaching before. So how might that happen through through this effort?
That's a great question. So one of the expectations and requests that we had for Lifeline is to really make sure that they're reaching out to other community-based organizations in the community. So Southwest Coalition is one of those partners who applied to be the operations vendor in this space, but they weren't actually ready. So we've already made those connections between Lifeline, Southwest Coalition, and other partners around the area. The purpose of the Oversight Committee is to really give that feedback and advice throughout the entire process. So we will be evaluating not only their metrics and outcomes and how many young people are utilizing that space, but we're also going to make those assessments. Where are we not reaching young people? Who is not utilizing that space? And who are those partners to bring into the conversation so that we can really expand and support all young people? So our hope is that this space is relevant to all. And so that's really what we're going to be doing through the Oversight Committee.
Okay. One of the things that comes to mind, because there's so many infrastructure projects that are happening in Southwest Denver, is making sure that there are ways for young people to get to this location, right? Valverde is essentially half residential, half industrial, and this sits right at that intersection point, right, between the two. Is that an existing conversation? Is there a way that we can support something like that?
So right now, the biggest challenge for us is, there is a bus stop right in front of the center, but it's not active. So we're trying to work with RTD to see what that could look like. We're also in conversation about what does transportation look like between different rec centers, community-based organizations, different areas across town. I know Lifeline is working with other community partners outside of City Council District 3 and 7 to bring young people into the center, but it's still a work in progress. But these are things that we've already identified. The bus was the number one thing because our office also manages and operates all of the youth transportation work. So that was our hope, is maybe we could be innovative, use some of the funding that we have for youth transportation and purchase a van, or try to think outside the box of how we can really get youth there.
Okay. One of the things that we're in conversation with is kind of microtransit options, and what is being piloted in other neighborhoods in Denver, evaluating how well are they working. Is it something that we can adopt in Southwest Denver and West Denver neighborhoods? Because of that gap. And so I'll be really interested in identifying kind of this ecosystem of request or of need for advocacy around this center. What other things can happen in Valverde and in getting, kids from Westwood and Athmar across Alameda, across Federal, to a location like this. So really trying to find some of the ways to overcome some of those physical barriers, which I know are already things that Valverde residents have been asking for.
Can you give me an example of what other districts are doing around, did you call that micro?
Yeah, like a micro transit. So Council President Gilmore might chime in about how that's what's happening in Montbello. And I think it's an exciting conversation for us to think about. So I don't know if you wanted to chime in now, or is that all right, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Good deal. Thank you, Councilor Pro Tem Torres. Yes, I had written down the Montbello connector here because it was something that we had to take a little bit of time to make sure that we had the full support of Dottie and that it wasn't going to stay a pilot. Because as you know, when something's a pilot and people get used to using it, and then for whatever reason that pilot goes away, you kind of leave folks with not very many options to close that gap. And the Montbello connector has been amazing in the Montbello community. Folks would really like to see the transportation area expanded to Green Valley Ranch, and so I would just recommend maybe reaching out to Dottie and their team because they worked with the Northeast Transportation Network. I might have gotten the acronym, the name wrong, but they are very well versed, and they're a third party, so they carry all of the insurance and the liability that might go along with that. And so we already have a model out there, and so would be interested in seeing that implemented on this side to work with the youth, especially transportation gaps.
That sounds great. If you don't mind, do you want to be a part of those conversations, Councilwoman?
Yes, I would love to. We've at least kind of kicked off some initial conversations with Dottie about, if we're going to be moving some of these conversations in other parts of the city and in West Denver, because we don't have a transportation authority in this particular part. We have a West Corridor one, but it's a little more north than this. This actually gives us an opportunity to think about how do we, can we create maybe a transportation co-op, right? That's co-owned by community members and drivers who live in these communities and are participating in this public opportunity to get kids and workers even across lines, right? It took a long time for the Morrison Road bus line to come back. So we know what kind of gaps we have and how much work it takes to get those services back in place. So however I can better support this, I'm interested in it. So thank you so much in taking such a firm leadership position on the Youth Empowerment Center, particularly in making it just a little less burdensome for the nonprofit who's in there that we're depending on, right, to help fill this need. So thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, your office was really a key thought partner in helping us reduce that cost. So thank you so much.
Perfect.
All right, Councilman Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Melissa, a couple of questions. Is this Lifeline Colorado?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know which organization it might have been. How long have they been in existence? Is there someone here from Lifeline who could answer that?
2016 is what our contracts manager is sharing with us when they really became.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
2016.
Okay. All right.
That's when they filed.
And who were there were two other proposers. Who were they?
Southwest Coalition and the Dream Foundation, Dream Center.
Excellent, okay. Did those two also meet all the criteria?
They didn't.
They did not? Okay, I'm just wondering, because it would be nice if all of our proposers met the criteria and
right.
we could choose from among them.
What we did, though, is they were all great applicants. Southwest Coalition was the runner-up. But what we did, we provided feedback, and we had meetings after Lifeline was identified as the finalist, just so that we can continue our partnership with both organizations. We connected the Dream Center to Lifeline so that they can provide services and supports if they'd like, and the Southwest Coalition is also going to be working with Lifeline, and the Office of Children's Affairs is actually putting the director of Southwest Coalition through some training. We gave them a scholarship so that they can build upon, just become a little bit more stronger so they can actually apply for some more competitive opportunities.
Excellent, thank you. So that raises a question. I noticed that we are not, in fact, you said this during the presentation, that we are not also contracting with them for any financial resources. How will Lifeline pay for the services that it provides here?
So their financials are grant funded, and they are already covered programmatically. I just think that as the city, we should look into how can we support Lifeline just to give them a little bit of a break. This is a huge space for them. They want to get furnishings. They want to make sure that the space is comfortable for young people and everyone that they serve. And so the Office of Children's Affairs will be applying for some ARPA Round 2 funding just to give them some support for about a year. And when we spoke to Lifeline, they were overly grateful. They don't necessarily, they'll survive without it, but I do think it's our responsibility to try to find some additional funding for them because we are asking them for a lot. And everything that they do is going to have to go through the oversight committee and be reviewed and approved.
Okay. That's good to hear. At the end of the 5 years, we may gift the building, the real estate to Lifeline.
Correct.
What will determine whether that decision happens? Is that something that necessarily would come back to council? Or does this lease itself that we're approving, which we don't have a copy of the actual lease yet here with us, which is problematic, does the lease itself contain the authorization to gift the building without having to come back to us?
So it's an agreement between the Department of Economic Development and Opportunity because they purchased the building with federal funds.
Yes.
It is something that they could gift at the end of the 5-year term. It's really dependent on the compliance, how they met expectations, and how they remained relevant to young people and community throughout that 5-year term.
Okay, so.
And I'm not quite sure how to answer coming back to council, and I'm not sure if our contracts manager has the answer to that. Do you?
I don't know that that's written into the lease agreement, which is an exhibit to our contract.
I mean, I'll find out when we get the contract.
Yeah, it is an exhibit.
I'm sorry?
It is an exhibit, the contract, the lease agreement.
We have it?
I believe so. I can get it. And we can get it right now if you don't have it.
Okay, it's not in our system. We have the presentation and we have the ordinance request.
We can get that to you.
I'd be a little concerned if we are right now with this action releasing the building 5 years later without any further oversight from the council. So that's.
We can get that between now and when it comes to council.
I would love to get an answer to that. Thank you. And then finally, Melissa, it looks from the presentation that the success metrics are yet to be developed. Is that what I understand? Because one of my first questions would be, how do we know if this is working?
Right. So before we put out the competitive RFP, the Office of Children's Affairs developed a short-term working group that really established and developed the Youth Empowerment Center model. In that model are metrics and ways to measure success. It's around trauma-informed practice. It's around how many young people are utilizing this space. Lifeline has a platform that can address all of the needs that all of the expectations that we have. We've been in conversation with Lifeline on really changing and updating their program to serve our needs. Once the oversight committee is developed, though, we'll be revisiting exactly what we need, because a lot of it is compliance from the Department of Economic Development and Opportunity. And then where OCA comes into play is really around that program development and how many young people they're serving. And then DITO has their own compliance that is really around the federal guidelines. So it's very strict and very detailed. So we'll be putting that formally into documents once that committee is.
Okay, so if these metrics were in the RFP, did you say?
Yes.
Can you forward that to us also?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, what it is, we'll be understanding that they will be formalized and et cetera afterward. I'd like to see what's the starting point.
Okay.
So thank you. That's
of course.
All, appreciate it.
Thank you. Council Pro Tem Torres, you're back up.
Thank you. Yeah, just following up on that line of questioning, Melissa, I think it'd be helpful for me from a city attorney perspective before we see this on the floor to understand how or if that changes, because we're also putting bond dollars into this building, and prior advisement for other buildings in West and Southwest Denver was that created a different scenario of turning over any city facility to a nonprofit. So I'd like to circle back and make sure I'm understanding that, because that also involved bond dollars.
Okay.
I don't know. That piece, I think, I'd want to better understand what happens to kind of catalyze that decision making to turn over a property that we've acquired.
We can definitely let you all know, and we have our city attorney Jason Moore with us here today, and we've been working with real estate, the Department of Finance, and our city attorney to draft that language. But if there's anything missing, we'll definitely incorporate that and inform you.
Okay.
I'm still learning too.
Okay. Thanks, Melissa.
Sure.
Thank you for the questions. Melissa, can you give me an idea on what the scope is of the services at the Empowerment Center, how many youth they're expecting to serve, so on and so forth?
So the estimate of young people that they're going to serve is really up to their outreach plan and how many young people from community are going to be utilizing this space. Our intention was to give them a year to get off the ground, get settled, build relationships, and build rapport within community. Our hope is that they offer trauma wraparound services, mental health services, reentry programs. We have Denver Human Services there offering additional supports to community. We have the Department of Safety operating some programming out of that space. We have DPS going into that space and offering some out-of-school time programming. So it's really just all around. So we're really trying to think about how to meet the individual. How do we build financial literacy skills, employment, vocational skills, et cetera? It's everything that was written into the action table strategy.
Okay. The other thing I just wanted to mention briefly, 7 more centers by 2024. Correct. That's pretty optimistic timeline.
Yes.
Do we have properties, addresses in mind, secured? Where
yes.
is this at?
So what's been happening with the youth empowerment centers and the thought of getting 7 additional centers by 2024 really came from conversations with DPS around declining enrollment and school closures. So our office asked DPS if they're going to close any schools, that they utilize that building space and turn them into a youth empowerment center. So DPS is right now looking at our youth violence prevention index map and covering it with the schools that they're talking about closing. They're all within that inverted L, and so they're moving forward in partnership with our office and the mayor's office to really open up those centers by 2024.
And do we know whether this would involve the city purchasing buildings from DPS or a partnership?
It's a partnership.
Okay, great.
We wouldn't have to purchase anything.
All right, thank you. Council President Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking up Lifeline. I'm not really familiar with them. When you send information over to Councilman Flynn, it'd be really helpful to understand. Do you know what their annual operating budget is?
I do, because they sent it to us, but I don't have it in my brain right now, but I can send that over to you. They sent over their financial, all of their disclosures when they applied during the RFP process, so we can happily send that over to you.
Okay, great. I would really be interested in just a little bit more information about the organization and the programs, and understanding what the equity is across the city in how real estate and our city attorney's office and DIDO are creating equity in how they structure these sort of programs and agreements, especially with nonprofits across the city, because looking at this looks like a interesting way that it's set up, and especially with after 5 years, the building being turned over, and how that works exactly, especially if there were bond dollars put into it, and then are we setting nonprofits up for success or failure? Because a nonprofit that doesn't have a building on their books as an asset, that can have negative implications for that organization for years to come, because a funder might stop giving money to that organization because they are sitting with such an asset on their books. And so I just raised that as a potential issue that could actually hurt a nonprofit in where the city's maybe trying to offload something and not have the responsibility of the maintenance costs, et cetera, because if the city gifted it over, it would have to be an additional agreement to then have that city support. And so I just raised that as a potential issue, since DIDO and the city, you know, they assist nonprofits, but they don't necessarily run them. And I agree. Look at the long-term implications. So just wanted to bring that up.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of work on the front end to reduce the cost burden. for Lifeline and any other community organization that, would go into a lease agreement with the city. And you're right, after 5 years, if you do hand over a building of that size, there is a lot of financial responsibility that comes with that building. If the city for 5 years was covering that cost, that's something that's definitely on our radar. And I don't have the answer just yet, but it's definitely something that we're talking through and trying to figure out and navigate.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
All right, well, seeing no further questions, I'll ask if there's a motion. I see it already, moved by Council Pro Tem Torres, seconded by Councilman Flynn to move 0705 to the full council. Any objections? Seeing none, we'll see you at council, but do please, if you could get all the information requested as soon as possible. There are some gaps we need time to consider.
Sure. Happy to do so. Thank
Thanks
you so much.
for the presentation. We look forward to seeing you at council. All right, new paragraph. We'll now shift over to the Department of Public Health and Environment, looking at Measure 0716, which would amend the revised municipal code to transfer governance of the Crime Prevention and Control Commission from DDPHE to the Department of Safety. As I mentioned, we'll have a presentation from our Department of Public Health and Environment. Turn the floor over to Tristan Sanders, after which we will have public comment and then questions from council. Mr. Sanders, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, members of council. Thanks for the time. Tristan Sanders, Director of Community and Behavioral Health at the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. I'll be presenting the Crime Prevention and Control Commission, some changes to the governing ordinance. All right, I'm going to start with a little bit of background, and then we'll go through what the goals of this are. So first, the ordinance to create the Crime Prevention and Control Commission was formed in 2005, began with an appropriation of $1.2 million. That expanded in 2009 to $3.5 million. Moved away from that fixed appropriation in 2017, and today funding recommendations are made through the home agency. So that's an important point. Currently, the commission makes funding recommendations through Denver Public Health and Environment. With the changes that we're discussing today, that would actually go through the Department of Safety. The goals of the commission are broadly stated here to decrease the jail population, reduce recidivism, address broadly behavioral health needs before, during, and after involvement in the justice system, and foster a variety of innovation and alternatives in the criminal justice system. There's a number of things listed in the actual ordinance around behavioral health there, but we called out a few of the broader items here. So some of the changes we're going to highlight in the presentation. You also should have a copy of the actual ordinance with the lined changes as well. But I think the important ones we'll highlight here. So first, we're amending Chapter 2 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code, where this resides, to update the procedures and transfer of governance of the commission from DDPHE to the Department of Safety. A key point here is that, as mentioned, a lot of the goals of the CPCC, as I'll refer to it going forward, align closely with the Department of Safety. The Department of Safety operates the jail, and a number of the reentry programs and a lot of the programs that relate to reducing the jail population and reducing recidivism. And so many of the initiatives funded through the CPCC, there's about 21 of them, relate specifically to these goals. And so having the commission with direct access and input to the department that oversees many of the same programs that the CPCC is recommending makes sense for this move. The process by which this ordinance revision is coming to you followed from a subcommittee of the CPCC. So a group of CPCC commission members got together to go through the ordinance, identify the areas of concern or areas that they thought could be revised. They put that forth to the full commission, the full body. The full body of the commission approved those. The Department of Public Health and Environment, along with the Department of Safety, considered all those changes, and through a little bit of back and forth, we all agree that these are the best path forward for the commission. Some of the, again, highlights are some of the funding recommendations through the home agency. Again, moving away from that fixed appropriation in 2017, but just clarifying that the recommendations come through the home agency. There's also a deletion of the mandated leadership elected by members. A key here is that the commission would actually adopt bylaws that clarifies a lot of the procedures of the commission, which includes the election of leadership. Again, the home department and input on staffing. So the home department being DDPHE currently would now be the Department of Safety, but it also clarifies that the commission would actually have input into the staffing that would be hired to support the CPCC. Another point in this transfer from home departments is that the two agencies involved in this transfer have agreed on the staffing that would transfer between the agencies to support the CPCC. Lastly, the procedures and bylaws and guidelines of the commission that outline the powers, duties, and the annual reporting requirements have all been clarified, mostly the language update, but a little bit procedural. So the annual report, it listed very specifically things that were required in the annual report. Some of that language was taken out just because of how broad the CPCC requirements are for programs that it supports. And it gave a little more autonomy, I guess you could say, to report on the programs that are supported by the CPCC. And this is really reflective of the work that the CPCC has done around behavioral health and some of the broadening of programs that they're doing in that area. Some of the specific changes, so in the legislative intent, we're showing you the old language and what was struck and replacing it with to request annual appropriations as determined by a vote of the commissioners. So this is really to clarify that the commissioners would vote on what they are requesting for budget that would go to the home agency to be included in their budget request. As it relates to the officers, you can see there was a lot of language specifically about the officers and mandating how they were elected, how they were serving, et cetera. This is replacing it with the commission shall establish officers in accordance with its bylaws. This basically gives the commission a little bit more autonomy within their bylaws to describe the leadership structure that they would like to achieve within the commission. As it relates to the staffing and administrative support, as I mentioned, the current language, staffing and other administrative support shall be provided by the Department of Public Health and Environment. That's being replaced with that support shall be provided by the Department of Safety. And then the addition of hiring decisions shall be made with input from the commission's officers. So the officers of the CPCC would have input into those staffing and hiring decisions. In the procedures section, so again, this is around the procedures, bylaws, and guidelines. It's mostly just clarifying some of the duties and procedures of the commission and allowing the commission's officers to promulgate the rules and regulations that they would like to achieve, again, in their bylaws, as opposed to specifically in the ordinance itself. So again, just to go over the process that this went through. First, the subcommittee of the CPCC developed and reviewed the changes that were recommended in the ordinance. It was approved by the full commission. This was reviewed and approved by the executive directors of DDPHE and the Department of Safety. We have our partners from Safety here with us to answer questions as well, if there are any. The Budget Management Office provided guidance around the funding requests and the procedures that would follow. So basically approving that those requests could come to the home agency and be a part of that home agency's budget requests. Lastly, the City Attorney's Office provided legal guidance regarding the appropriation of funds. So as we mentioned, the CPCC moved away from that appropriation of funds and to a recommending through the home agency. That really is in line with city charter. And all of the language in the ordinance before you complies with city charter and has been reviewed by city attorneys to be in compliance. And that's what we have before you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I have folks from DDPHE and the Commission itself, as well as Department of Safety, to answer anything you have.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. Before we get to questions, we have 4 folks signed up for public comment. Each speaker will get 2 minutes. Ms. Lapel will time, and all 4 are virtual. We've got Katie Blakey, Carol Peoples, Jesse Paris, and Catherine Crow. And let's start with Katie Blakey, please.
I live in District 10. Really sorry for the loud noise outside, if you can hear that. I think DDPHE is a better home for this commission. Through programs like STAR, we've seen how a public health-driven response to things like substance use or homelessness reduces nonviolent crime reports. I'm sure you've seen the recent study that came out of Stanford analyzing the first 6 months of the STAR program. And it found that a 34% reduction in low-level crime in the area where STAR operated, as well as significant cost savings. While this commission seems to focus primarily on people who are already involved with the criminal legal system, the causes of crime, incarceration, and recidivism, like mental health and substance use issues, poverty, lack of access to opportunity and support, etc., are the same. By having that different lens of public health and behavioral health, I think the program could be most effective, especially in its goal of fostering innovation and alternatives in the criminal legal system. We need new ideas that address what we know to be the root cause of crime, not framed through the lens of policing and incarceration. Of course, the commission will need to work closely with the Department of Safety, but that should not be its primary focus or its positioning. I'd also like to learn more about the commission and how it measures its effectiveness in meeting each of its stated goals and how it reports out performance to stakeholders. Thanks.
Next up, Carol Peoples.
Good morning, council members. Thank you so much for this opportunity to attend this virtually. I'm a commissioner on the Crime Prevention Control Commission, and I was one of the commissioners who worked on the committee to review the ordinance and pushed to have a review of the ordinance, as well as to move the commission to the Department of Public Safety. I did have a little bit of a quarrel with the presentation. I believe all the changes occurred in 2018 when the commission, it was in November, when the commission was changed. And at that point, and this is something that several of the council members on the committee at that time raised as a concern, and that was that the officers actually were removed in 2018. It wasn't, and that was the ordinance changed then, as well as removing the annual appropriation for the commission and requiring that recommendations, expenditures go through the expending authority, being the department. And so that became a bit of a problem over the last 2 years as we've been working as a commission. Just kind of, I've learned a lot going back and looking at the meeting, just seeing how things get implemented. So I just wanted to put that in the record. I'd love to see the entire ordinance as it's, I hope that's available to the public as it's been amended, because I've worked on this line by line and would love to be included in that. So anyway, just wanted to add my input. I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Ms. Peoples. Next up, Jesse Paris.
Yes, good morning, members of council. May I be heard? Yes, I'm Sean Paris, and I'm representing for Black Star Action Movement for Self-Defense, Positive Action Committee for Social Change, as well as the Unity Party of Colorado, the East Denver Residents Council, Frontline Black News, and I'll be the next mayor of Denver in 2023. I reside in District 8 in Christopher Herndon's district. For background, the Crime Prevention and Control Commission, or CPCC, was created after community advocates opposed the ballot measure for jail expansion in 2005. The programs it develops and implements are intended to decrease the use of the jail and reduce recidivism. It was initially housed under the Department of Safety. but then for political reasons bounced around, first to the Department of Human Services and then to DDPHE. Through this legislation, the CPCC is recommended to return its original department. But the question is now, how effective is it? So that's my first question. How effective is this move? Since its founding in 2005, the public knows very little about whether the CPCC has been able to deliver on its return on investment. I would like to see the evaluation questions answered, which are, which CPCC programs have been most effective? What are the lessons learned? And what is needed for CPCC to succeed under the next mayoral administration? If somebody can answer those questions, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Next up is Catherine Crow.
Thank you so much for having me and for having public comment. I think I'll echo a lot of what Katie Blakey asked about and her questions and points about the kind of conflation of public safety in sort of behavioral health and safety in terms of like where it shows up in city agencies. And I think one of the things that I was thinking about and that I have questions about when it comes to changing the kind of agency home of this particular commission is, you know, especially given the fact that the commission had changed or added some language in 2018 about an increased focus on behavioral health, which seems to be very much more in DDPHE's purview, as well as the Independent Monitor's Office and Citizens Oversight Board, which were founded the year prior to the commission coming about, which seem to have very kind of overlapping missions and do sit in safety. I'm just curious again, what kind of data does the commission have to show kind of the success or impact of the programs that they've been working on? Why kind of now is there this shift towards safety? I think that some of that was addressed by the director, especially in the insight of, again, that language in 2018 about behavioral health and programs like STAR that do sit within DDPHE and do focus on behavioral health and the potential move of the commission from, again, public health to safety, given that there is this, I would say, still very strong tie to public health that is in the charge of the commission, as I understand it, even with those kind of bylaw changes. And again, to go back to the question of what is the connection of the commission, if any, to the Citizens Oversight Board and the Office of the Independent Monitor, which seem to have related and overlapping missions, and also how does the work of the commission relate to the Task Force to Reimagine Safety? Thank you so much.
Thanks to all of our speakers. That concludes our public comment. Now we'll wait for questions from members of council and Council Pro Tem Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Tristan. Some questions that just came up as you were running through, I think, what were identified as some priority areas to affect in the legislation changes. Deletion of mandated leadership. I saw the insertion of refer to bylaws for officers, but was there something deleted that was in the ordinance that required something?
So I think you might have heard from the public comment, the deletion of the mandated leadership within the commission actually happened in 2018.
Oh, okay.
And so this is actually saying in the bylaws that could be clarified to have leadership for the commission.
And do you know what the bylaws say now?
So I don't, Asadia, correct me if I'm wrong, but they do not have current bylaws. They would be developing those to establish leadership and procedures, et cetera, to have elected leaders.
Okay, but this isn't to, there wouldn't be an option to leave absent a discussion about leadership of the commission?
I suppose if they wanted to in the bylaws, if they didn't want to address that, but I think the desire is actually to create bylaws to establish leadership.
Okay. So in larger scope, what happens to recommendations from CPCC now? Do they go to DDPHE leadership or to other?
Yeah, so currently, recommendations for funding from CPCC come to DDPHE. Actually, in my division, Community and Behavioral Health, they get put into our process for budget requests and submitted through our budget, other budget requests, and prioritized through the budget process. And so through this change, that would now fall under the Department of Safety and go through their budget process.
And I guess I'm just trying to understand, there was a deletion of language referring to the Crime Prevention and Control Fund. Does that move with the commission as well?
Yeah, so I want to make sure we're clear about this. So there's not an appropriation of funds. That was what went away in 2017-18. There's still a fund. There's a general fund cost center that exists for CPCC for any program that is approved where those funds sit. That still exists, and that is what would transfer with the program to Department of Safety and sit there to fund the programs that they recommend.
For Department of Safety, and Laura, I don't know if this is for you, the move to Department of Safety, does this provide CPCC with a broader opportunity to make recommendations to Department of Safety funding as it relates to the goals of CPCC?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councilwoman Torres. Laura Wachter, Deputy Director of Safety. And so we're currently working with the CPCC, with the leadership of CPCC as well as DDPHE in the budget office to work through what that process will be for the 2023 budget cycle. The CPCC will be in a special revenue fund. So but it will just be under the appropriation of Department of Safety. So working with Armando, they'll have a direct line to Armando Saldate, the Executive Director. And so still working through what that process will be, but we will take CPCC's, they've already submitted their expansion request for 2023. And so that will work through the budget process.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I know we have Jeff Holliday here, and Jeff guided the CPCC in his role with the Department of Public Health and Environment and has since been transferred to the Department of Safety. Jeff, I'm just wondering if you have any perspective or comments on this shift that you'd like to offer? Sorry to call you on the spot, my friend.
Thank you, Council Chair. For the record, Jeff Holliday, Deputy Director, Department of Safety. Yes, while I was at Department of Public Health and Environment, I participated in the subcommittee that did this body of work. As Director Saldate has indicated previously, we stand in support of these recommendations and continue to believe that movement of CPCC to the Department of Safety better aligns it in accordance with its core mandate under ordinance. And so we stand in support.
And your role now, as I understand it, in the Department of Safety is to provide guidance from a public health perspective on the policies and procedures in the Department of Safety. Am I on the mark there?
Yeah, that's correct, Councilman Cashman. As you know, I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have been practicing in behavioral health for nearly 25 years. And one of the core mandates or missions from Director Saldate is to understand public safety through a public health lens. And in that regard, he asked, and I agreed to join the director's office to advise on behavioral health matters. And that would also include, should the commission transition to the Department of Public Safety, that I would continue to advise him on behavioral health matters as it pertains to programs funded under the commission.
Great, thank you for that answer. Yeah. Councilmember Flynn, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question for Tristan or Jeff. I have not had a chance to be as familiar with this as I would like to be before moving it to the council. Mr. Chair, it would be my suggestion that, in fact, I would make a motion that we hold this to a date certain. If Emily could look at the calendar, Is there a time sensitivity to this related to the budget cycle or anything like that? That this is mid-June, we don't get the budget till September? The fact is, as I'm looking at it and listening to the presentation, I have too many questions than could actually be tackled here. I'd like to understand it more, reach out for a briefing, and maybe have other members of council ask for a briefing. This is a major change, and for me to be reading it just this morning, and I apologize I didn't read the material between Thursday and today, it's asking a little much to set it on the course to the floor of council and then just relying on that week and a half to get questions answered.
Would you suggest 2 weeks?
I would suggest the next convenient opening in the committee schedule, whenever Emily finds that.
Jeff?
Thank you for the request. I'll defer to Mr. Sanders, as the commission resides currently at DPHE. I would offer that I'm happy to avail myself for a conversation at your convenience to discuss any questions that you have or anybody else on this subcommittee.
Certainly, and based on the presentation and on some of the comments we got, I just need to understand it more deeply before sending it down the path, at which point then it would be more difficult to make any changes or to make decisions about it.
Similarly, I'll make myself available for a briefing to you or anyone on council to go through any of the details. It is a commission that's been around a long time, so I know there's a lot of history. But
and I understand that for staff, you've been involved in it for quite some time, and you understand it inside out. But the four of us up here are just hearing the details about it today, unless any other member has had a briefing on this yet. I've looked through my email. No one reached out to my office over the last couple of months offering to brief us on this. So that's not a criticism, mind you. It's
happy to be available.
Just from our end, it's a difficult ask.
Happy to be available.
Could I, Mr. Chair, could I offer a motion to postpone this to a date certain, being the next available opening in the Safety Committee schedule? And I would make that motion.
Okay, and Emily, what would be the first available?
We could do June 29th.
It's 2 weeks.
Does that present a budgetary problem? I see Laura coming up.
From a safety perspective, again, I'll make myself available at your convenience. I would just offer that there are also staff that are a part of this transition, and I do want to be sensitive to closing the loop as quickly as we can, so that we bring some resolution to their situation sooner than later, because transitions like this are anxiety provoking, and I want to be sensitive to that.
What are those gaps?
I'm sorry?
There's gaps?
Staff.
Staff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's a new microphone, and I'm still getting used to it.
Laura, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Councilman Cashman. I was just going to add that we are already partnering with EDPHE and the Budget Office in terms of the budget process. And so we'll work through that. In 2 weeks, it shouldn't be any issue for the budget process. So we'll still keep things moving from that perspective.
Sure.
Great. I have Council Pro Tem Torres' comment.
Just commenting that I'd support the motion to hold it for 2 weeks, so that Councilman Flynn and others, I'd probably take you up on the offer for a briefing as well.
Thank you. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we do have 30 minutes, I wondered, in the interest of transparency for both the public and the agency folks, if Councilmember Flynn, you had questions that you wanted to pose during committee so we could have that discussion, or if you would prefer to have the briefing and then come back, I can support the postponement as well.
Madam President, I would prefer to get a deep dive briefing rather than, I don't even know what the questions are, is the point. And sometimes we are put in a position of moving things forward without full information, and that's not very comfortable. And so I would prefer to, at a very convenient time for whatever staff needs to be there, just do a meeting. Could be virtual, could be in my office. I'm assuming that other council members will want to do that as well before moving this to the floor. Madam President, I'm not sure what my questions will be until I do a deeper dive and have the briefing.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that, Councilmember Flynn.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Before we get into a vote on your motion, I would just ask anybody from the DDPHE or safety team if you have any comments you'd like to make, any information you'd like to relate, or you're comfortable with the 2-week postponement, at which point I think we'll be hopefully ready to move things forward to council. I see nodding of heads. People are comfortable.
I think that'll be fine. We can.
Thank you. And my thought is, being a member of the commission, perhaps we have not done a thorough enough job of really letting folks know the details of the operation of the CPCC. And this would be a great opportunity to do that, because I think some good work has been done, and it's a vehicle for additional good work moving forward. So with that, Councilman Flynn has proposed a postponement. Do I have a second to that? Thank you, Council Pro Tem Torres. Any objections to postponement to June 29th? Hearing none, it shall be so. Thank you very much for the presentation, the questions, and the patience. And,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I wanted to interject. Did you say June 29th, or are we talking about July 29th? I just wanted to clarify, since for the public record.
June 29th.
Okay. All right. Great.
The next available date after that is July 27th, so maybe you saw that in the chat. But
all right. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe we have no further business for this committee this morning, and so our work is adjourned. Thank you all.